Hi, my name is Maria. I am a student of the School of Mary for about 3 years now. I came to the School of Mary indirectly through my spiritual director while in the process of discernment for consecrated life. I'm a cradle Catholic and by the grace and mercy of God, a practicing Catholic. I also went to Catholic schools my whole life, from primary grades all the way through university, both in the Benedictine and Franciscan tradition, and certainly thanks to the love and sacrifices of my parents. I would say that I am a very well catechized Catholic, both through my schooling and also at home. Also, as a family, we prayed together at times. We went to parish activities, had the priest over, had the sisters over for dinner, things like that. So I definitely had a very good taste of what it is to be a Catholic. At some point, I was involved in youth group, and a lot of the people in youth group were doing mission trips and evangelizing trips and things like that. I did a couple mission trips, both here in the US and abroad. And eventually, after I graduated from college and started working, I decided that the best way for me to live my faith was to become active in my parish. I became a lector, a catechist, a singer. I organized youth retreats, did fundraising, became an extraordinary minister of the Eucharist. I worked the fish fry, I worked parish festival. I was what you would say a very involved parishioner. During this time as well, I developed this little habit of spending an extra 10 to 15 minutes with the Lord after Mass. I would wait for everybody to leave Mass, and then I would just sit there. It was something very simple for me. I felt that Jesus was alone and I wanted to keep him company. So I would do so for 10 to 15 minutes. Initially, I was just enjoying his presence, letting him know that I was there, that I was present for him. Sometimes I would read prayers, but for the most part, it was something very simple. One Sunday morning, during my alone time with Jesus, the Lord interrupted me. I was reading a little prayer from a book, and that's why I say he interrupted me. And he asked me a question. And it was something that touched me very deeply, something very personal. And I won't tell you what the question was, but I will tell you what my answer was. I said, "But Jesus, I'm already doing all these things for you." And very gently, he let me know that there was more to give. I continued my little practice, and at some point, I realized that what he wanted was me, myself, my person. So I did what seemed the most logical thing to do. I went to my parish priest. My parish priest was not quite equipped to handle my little dilemma, you could say. He didn't understand the depth of my inquiry, and to be honest, I don't know exactly if I was even verbalizing it correctly. I was simply telling him what happened to me during prayer. And he didn't understand why was I crying, why was I saying that Jesus had called me, why was I saying that God had touched my heart. That's why I say I'm not even sure that I was verbalizing it correctly. But basically his answer to me was to do more things. So of course I complied, and I did more things for several years. And through this whole time, at the end of each year of confirmation, because I prepared kids for confirmation, the sacrament of confirmation, every year, at the end of the year, I would say, I gotta answer that question for Jesus. I gotta answer that question. He's still asking me that question, and I gotta answer. So at one point, the Lord very firmly sort of put his foot down, and through a series of events, I realized that I should be discerning a call to consecrated life. At that time, I didn't know what spiritual director was. I had heard of spiritual directors, but um, my idea of a spiritual director was they were for nuns in convents, for people that were already consecrated, for visionaries, things like that. They weren't really for someone like me who wanted to answer this question and return the love that I felt that I was being loved with. And how would I go about it, and what did that really mean? So, like I said, through a series of events, I ended up moving to a different part of the country. And this other place where I moved, I joined a new parish, and I met an ecclesial family, which is a form of consecrated life, a newer form of consecrated life in the church. I was a member of this ecclesial family for a few years. And in this ecclesial family, I learned a lot about community life, consecrated life, what it means to be part of the mission of the church. It was really a very good experience. Unfortunately, when I saw that I was not going to be able to be a member of this ecclesial family for life, I decided then that I would go ahead and discern religious life outright. I ended up selling my house, giving away my possessions, including my dog, leaving my friends, my job, my family, and I went to another country. My experience being formed in a contemplative community with monastic enclosure was probably one of the most beautiful things that I have ever experienced. I learned to love the church. So just as I love Jesus, just as I love Jesus intensely, I learned to love the church through the liturgical rhythm of the practice of the Liturgy of the Hours. I came to realize that that Jesus and the church were one, and to love Jesus was to love the church. So if I gave myself to Jesus, it meant to give myself to the church. During this time of formation with this community, I was also experiencing, I would say, an incongruency in my prayer life. There was something in my interior life, my prayer life, personal prayer life, that was not quite falling into place. Although, although I did quite well in the contemplative life, and I was definitely integrating the charism and things like that, there was something that was amiss. So I spoke to my superior and to my confessor, and I discerned to leave in order to seek more clarity as to what exactly was the Lord asking of me. I came back to the United States, and thankfully a member of my family took me in. Initially, a parish took me in, and then one of my siblings took me into their house. And during this time, I started looking at communities, and eventually decided that I would simply live a life of prayer and simplicity and continue to practice the Liturgy of the Hours while I continued to discern what the next step would be. About 2 months into having returned home or to the United States, my spiritual director told me that she could no longer see me, and she had other responsibilities, and she could no longer have directees. So I don't know, for other people maybe this is not a big deal, but for me, not having a spiritual director in the midst of a very critical time in my discernment was a complete disaster. I was really at a loss as to what I was gonna do next. I felt as if Jesus was right in front of me, and this bridge between the two of us that I was meant to walk was just falling apart. And interiorly, it's hard to explain unless you've gone through a process of discernment, that for me it was like as if you gosh, it was like trying to get to someone you love and you can't get to them. And they're right there and they can't get to you, you can't get to them. So my spiritual director told me, after she calmed me down, to find myself another spiritual director. And she said, during this time of your discernment, you are going to have to go to Our Lady for help. And that is exactly what I did. I remember I crossed the street. I live across the street from church. Thanks be to God, because God is very good. And I went to the grotto of the church. It's an image of a statue of Our Lady of Lourdes, but it's actually called the Grotto of Our Lady of Joy. I was not very joyful. I was crying and I was in pain. And I had this very heart-to-heart conversation with Our Lady. And I said, Mother, you have to be my mother. You have to guide me. You have to help me. I want to get to your son. I can't get to him. And please help me. Please teach me how to get to your son. And then in the middle of this very sorrowful and heartfelt prayer, these words came out of my mouth. I said, Mary, if only you had a school. I went on to pray, and I remember it was around noon because I prayed midday prayer. And then when I returned back to my sister's house, I decided, well, why not? I'm gonna search. So I did my search, and I searched for the School of Mary, because I figured if Mary had a school, it would be called the School of Mary, obviously. So I searched, and voila, this School of Mary exists, and it was founded by Jean Corrie. So very shortly after that, I signed up for Solid Foundations 000. And it was an amazing grace. And that's no pun intended. But it was really an answer to my prayers. I couldn't believe that Our Lady could answer prayers that perfectly and that fast. And so during this time of discernment, I have been taking courses at the School of Mary, and I would definitely recommend them, particularly Solid Foundation 000. For anyone discerning consecrated life, even thinking about consecrated life, I feel that the courses that the School of Mary offers give you almost like an advantage to what is to come if you continue in the path of consecrated life.